In the last video, I tried to explain all the components of a test of significance and how, so now let's focus on how we're going to conclude all of that. And there's two statements that we're going to have. In our last example with the kissing example, we are actually going to reject the null hypothesis. So in this case, we'd say since the p-value of 0.00084 is less than alpha, we probably would set alpha at about 5% or maybe 0.25 if we want to be more strict, but definitely it's going to be less than that area that we've created. We're going to reject that people have no preference for tilting their head. So there's convincing evidence that they tilt their head to the right in this case. So that would be when we reject a null hypothesis. Remember, the null hypothesis was that there was no preference and it was 50-50. Now, there is another option. We might fail to reject it. So let's say we ended up with a probability of maybe 0.7 or just something that's greater than this is the threshold for where we would reject. We fail to reject it. There's not convincing evidence that something else is true. So now notice we never accept the null hypothesis. There's no quicker way to lose all of your points on a test of significance than accepting your null hypothesis. So think of a trial by jury in our court system. Right, so we know that saying about we always assume innocence until proven guilty. So in trials, we assume innocence. That would be our null hypothesis. We try to prove guilt. This would be our alternative with evidence. But you can never prove innocence. So what we're saying is somebody might be guilty. Somebody might be guilty, but we don't have enough evidence to show that they are. That doesn't mean they're innocent. It just means we don't have enough evidence to show that they're guilty. Same thing with these statistical tests for significance. We assume that the null hypothesis is true, and we're trying to show enough evidence that we can then say, nope, I believe this is true instead. So that is the same concept, just like a trial would do, assuming the null hypothesis is true unless we can prove something else is true. When an observed event known as our sample is so far from the expectation known as our parameter, there's no way it could have happened by chance. So when we do a random sample, there's always a small chance that it could be extreme, but it's very unlikely, and that's statistical significance. So let's get into a little bit more about how our alpha value falls into these tests for significance. So we said the p-value needed to be small to reject the null hypothesis. So basically, what does count as small? We use a significance alpha to tell us how small a p-value must be in order to reject the null hypothesis. So the book definition says this: if the p-value is smaller than alpha, we say the results of a study are significantly significant at that level. In that case, we reject the null hypothesis and conclude there is convincing evidence in favor of the alternative hypothesis. So explain this in plain English, please. When a sample statistic falls in the alpha tail, right tail, left tail, two tails, it's too far from the parameter that we think it is to have likely occurred by chance. So it's just really, really unlikely. So we're going to say, I don't think the parameter is actually true. So unless it's specified in a problem, alpha is usually set to 0.05 or 5%. So we're saying that if our statistic, if our sample ends up falling in the lower 5% or the upper 5% of our sampling distribution, then we should reject what the population parameter is telling us. However, sometimes they do set a smaller alpha if rejecting a null hypothesis can either impact lives or cost a company a lot of money. They may not want to do a lot of changes. Now, we of course know that there's a lot of ethics behind this, that some corporations do choose money over lives in some cases, and they might do some kind of analysis that they make poor decisions. But there's a lot of ethics that go into using this kind of data to make future decisions. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So what happens if we're wrong? Because if alpha is set at 5%, 5% of the time, something could occur by chance. So we hope we're correct, but the only way to know for sure is to take a census. Since censuses just aren't going to happen. So that means we have to find out absolutely everything in our population. There's always the possibility that we're wrong. So there's two types of mistakes we can make. There's a type 1 error and a type 2 error. So type 1 error, we reject the null hypothesis, but it was actually true. So we just by random chance did end up with a very extreme sample. A type 2 error is we failed to reject it, but it actually was false. And the alternative hypothesis is actually true. A type 2 error is actually a little more likely to occur if you think about it. If we just do a random sample, there is a possibility it's going to fall closer to our population, our null hypothesis, than fall away from it. So type 2 errors do occur more often than type 1 errors. So let's just look at a little table that helps us kind of think about what's going on here. So let's say we reject the null hypothesis, but the null hypothesis was true. So that's in this box right here. That's a type 1 error. Now let's say we reject the null hypothesis, and goodness, the null hypothesis was actually false. That's what we want to happen. So this is good. We didn't make any mistakes. What happens if we fail to reject the null hypothesis and the null hypothesis is actually true? Well, once again, that is good. We want that to happen. There's no problem there, no error. And the last possibility, we fail to reject the null hypothesis, but the null hypothesis was actually false. That is a type 2 error. So let's put this into some context you might understand a little bit. Let's consider our trial by jury. We've got a null hypothesis and an alternative. So a defendant is innocent would be our null hypothesis, because we always assume people are innocent till they're proven guilty. So our alternative is, of course, that the defendant is guilty. So in this case, a type 1 error would be we reject the null. The defendant is proven guilty, but they were actually innocent. And this does happen in our legal system. So what would be the opposite of this, the type 2 error? So type 2 would be there's not enough evidence to prove guilt, even when the defendant actually did commit the crime or whatever happened here. So then, of course, we get into a lot of ethical dilemmas. Which one's worse? I think in most cases, a type 1 error would be worse, which is good news that the type 2 error is more likely to occur. However, what if the crime were murder or something more extreme? So there's a lot of ethical dilemmas in there. So let's even consider this for a medical test. So let's keep it pretty simple. Null hypothesis, a drug works at preventing heart disease. Alternative, a drug does not work at preventing heart disease. I'd like you to kind of work out what would be the type 1 error, what would be the type 2 error, and what would be some ethical issues about rejecting about each kind of error. So I kind of am interested to see what you guys are thinking about that.